Good morning, everyone. Oh, let's see. It looks like we have quite a few people in attendance already. I'm sure more people will pop in as we go. But yes, just wanted to welcome everyone to our grant webinar. It is being recorded, just so you all know. So if you ask questions later, off mute, just know that those will be recorded. We're going to share the recording with everyone in attendance, as well as those who registered who could not be here. So yes, we're happy to have you all here. My name is Angel Woodrum. I'm the awards manager. I've probably talked to a couple of you all through email or maybe over the phone last year during our grant process, but I help to manage the RAFI grants here. I also have Hope on the call. She does a lot of our comms work, which is great. She has been helping a lot with registration and getting our grant communications up and running, as well as two other RAFI staff here in the background. Beth and Alexa are both here. So we're happy to host you all. We hope that you take away from this webinar the grant dates that everything opens, as well as we have some tips and tricks and kind of letting you in on what's on the application, how applications are reviewed, how things get scored, all of that kind of thing. So a little inside look on grant writing at RAFI. And I did just want to say, full disclosure, our grants are for the Southeast US as well as US Caribbean. So if you're not in any of those service areas, you may still find something useful in this webinar, maybe just like general grant writing tips, but we are going to really focus on the RAFI farmer grants. Oh, and I already see some questions in the chat. So at the end, we're going to have like a Q&A session. And so we will get to hopefully everyone's questions at the end. Hope's going to help me sort through those. And I do apologize if I'm moving around. I have animals running around my house, but hopefully they're not too much of a distraction. All right, and we will dive on in. So we do like to give just an introduction to RAFI whenever we do a webinar or public event. So everyone's kind of on the same page of what we do. So RAFI, we're a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to challenge the root causes of unjust food systems and support and advocate for economically, racially, and ecologically just farm communities. So that's a lot. So RAFI kind of has a lot of different touch points. And we're an old organization as far as nonprofits go, right? We've been around for 35 years. We are based in Pittsburgh, but we do a lot of work in the Southeast US as well as USVI in Puerto Rico. We do some national level work, so our policy work is really at that federal level. We also have a farmer hotline that any farmer can call, and we try to point you to the correct resources or give you support for farm crisis and emergencies. So that's a brief rundown of what we do as an organization. And so we're just going to jump right into talking about these grants. That's why everyone's here, right? Like, we want to know what's going on with the grants. So the grants that we do, the farmer grants, it's something we've been doing for years. We try to have about the same open date every year. So it's February. That means it's time for the grants. And we have three different ones, and I'll go into a little bit of detail on each of these. So yeah, we will get right in here. So our beginning farmer stipend opens first, and that is opening this Monday. So set your calendars. And this is for farmers who have less than 3 years of farming experience, and they are currently owning their operation and like have their own farm. We do ask that these people are farming in the Southeast. That's what our funding is able to support. And we do have the eligibility quiz again this year. This is something we started last year, and we saw that it really helped to cut down on applications that were ineligible because we don't want you all, spending 2 hours doing an application only for us to be like, oh, actually, this person's in Texas, so we can't actually fund them. So we've just known that, or have seen that that's really helped cut down on, farmers wasting their valuable field time on doing an admin task that unfortunately they weren't eligible for. And the awards for beginning farmer are up to 5,000 again this year. And then we have our Southeast Infrastructure Grant. So this is for farmers who have owned and operated their operation for 3 years or more, and have been in the same location for 2 years. Um, Again, this is for Southeast farmers. We are doing the eligibility quiz this year that opens February 23rd, so the last Monday of the month. And this is up to $10,000. And I just happened to see this question. Is Kentucky considered part of the Southeast? Yes, it is. I should have put a list. That's something I can pull up at the end so you all can have a list of those states on the screen. So up to 10,000. Our other grant that we have is very similar to the Southeast Infrastructure Grant, only it is for farmers in the U.S. Caribbean. So again, farming for 3 or more years in the same location for 2 of those years. And this is a bit different, but the grants for the U.S. Caribbean infrastructure are up to 10,000 this year, which is great. That's a change we've been wanting to make for a few years, so very happy we were able to do that this year. Now we're going to get into a little bit of the application breakdown. We're going to talk about a couple of things like how the application is structured, what kinds of questions are on the application, what really matters on the application, like kind of those bigger themes of what our review panel is looking for, as well as some writing tips. And these are a bit subjective, but things that we've just kind of noticed that our reviewers really pay attention to. So, application, what is on it? So I break down the application in 3 different sections in my brain. That's just kind of how I think about the applications. And the 3 applications differ a little bit insofar as their questions, but the structure of both applications are the same, and some of the same exact questions between applications. So the first section you're going to see is, in addition to, basic contact information, we're going to be asking you some multi-select questions. So this is asking like what enterprises you have. You'll pick from a list. We're going to ask what you grow, where you sell your products, things like that, things that are just very like cut and dry questions. Then we're going to roll into those open-ended questions. So these are the longer form questions where we're really trying to understand what is your project? What do you want to do with these funds? As well as a little bit more about your farm, just to get a better idea of like what scale you're at, like an idea of your workflow, things like that. Just kind of like very general things so that our review panel can get a good idea of who you are, because these are people who have not met you, they haven't been to your farm, so really trying to fill in as much detail for them as possible. Then our last section is the supplemental application information. And so that's where you're going to be uploading files. So we ask for a reference. So this is either going to be the Southeast grants, we ask for just a reference contact information. So someone to call to verify that this is a farmer, they do sell their products. So we want that reference to really be able to speak to you as kind of a farming business, and it could be a customer as well, as opposed to like, this person's very knowledgeable, but I haven't actually seen their farm. I don't actually know if they sell products. Like that would not be a great reference. We also ask that that reference not be a family member. Then we ask for a quote for your project, and that's really just to show that you've done some research, you understand about how much it's going to realistically cost for you to do this project. So that could be like if you're doing an irrigation project, you could upload a quote for, 1,000-foot line of drip irrigation, something like that. It doesn't have to be like every single piece of your project you are uploading there, but we just ask for one quote. And I will make the caveat that it be like a significant piece of your project. We've had people in the past like upload a quote for potting soil, like a $17 bag of potting soil. That is technically a quote, but it's like this person doesn't really seem to understand like how much this project's going to cost. So that's kind of word to the wise, like something that's going to be a significant part of the project. Oh, that quote can also be like contract labor, like if you're building something or need to grate land. If you reach out to a contractor and they give you an estimate, that's fine to upload. And we have two new things we're asking for on the applications this year. For the photos, that's going to be all three applications are asking for at least one picture, but up to three pictures of your farm. We want to see like your farm in action. We don't really want to see people. We don't want to see just like a farmer's market stand, but we really want to see what your farm looks like during peak production. So if you have photos from last year during whatever is your peak productive season. We would love to see those. If you have a drone photo, that would be great. But yeah, just any like field production and livestock or vegetables, bees, whatever it is that is kind of your like main enterprise would be great to upload there. And then for the Southeast, we are asking for um, some kind of business entity documentation. And this is very loose. It could be like if you have an LLC registered, it could be that documentation. If you have an EIN number or EIN registered, you can upload that. Or it could be something like if you sell to a food hub or restaurant and you have a copy of an invoice you've made, it could be that. Just something that shows that you are actually selling product. That's something that farmers will have to pass the due diligence phase. So we just went ahead and asked for it up front so there's no confusion about what we're looking for. All right. And then what matters, I've touched on some of these already, but I did just want to say that RAFI staff, we're not the ones making the funding decisions. Um, we have an external panel that reviews applications, and it's made up of mostly farmers. We have some like ag professionals, so like extension agents, ag professors, things like that. So they're the ones reading your application, and they are very knowledgeable in farming. So they kind of know how to read an application and start getting a picture of that farm in their head. So as you're writing your application, we like to let people know that that's who's reading their application. So just make sure you're providing the details that you need to let yourself shine, to let people know who you are, what your farm does, and kind of paint some kind of mental picture for them. So we want the application or the reviewers to walk away from reading your application with no questions about how the funds are going to be used, right? Like the panel as well as RAFI want to know that these funds are going to be poured into your farm and you're doing a project that is really going to improve the workflow of your farm, the efficiency of your farm. Maybe it's going to help you get into new markets. Maybe it's going to help you meet your current market demand. So just really like be the expert on that. Like go into the application with like, I know exactly what I need to do to advance my farm to where I want it to be. So details are important, and we'll get more into some writing tips on how to help convey that. We also want them to know that you know how to implement your project, right? Like, we do ask for a budget and timeline, so that is a great place for you to really share, like, I have researched what I need. I've actually worked on this project before at a different farm that I volunteered or worked at in the past, so I like know what to do. I know steps to take to get the project done. So, writing an application. Um, I'm kind of gonna start in the middle here and go backward, but every year we love to tell applicants We don't care if you're a great writer. We don't even care if you misspell things. That's fine, as long as like we can kind of gather what it says. So don't put a lot of pressure on yourself to be like the best writer. In fact, I really encourage people to do a list when you're answering questions. Like if the question is something um, like how is this project going to help your farm? It is very fine to just do a numbered list of like, number one, I currently have a fourth of an acre in vegetable production. I have to hand water it. Number two, I would love to install a drip irrigation system because it's going to free up all this time that I do hand watering. Number three, I can use this time to do other projects that I've gotten behind on. So things like that, totally fine. If that's going to help you convey your project and your message, that is great. So let's see where to go from here. We've talked about details. The application is big. It's not huge. It's not like doing like a USDA grant application, but it does take some time. So I really encourage people, do not wait till the due date to open the application and look at it. Sometimes that's just when you come across the grant, so you can't help it. But whenever you find the grant application, open it, start brainstorming, think on it, come back and work on it. So start as early as you can. Photos, we've already talked about that, so I don't need to go in too much detail on that. It can take an hour or more to complete, depending on like how fast of a typer and thinker you are. So know that going in, it could take maybe even up to 2 hours. Who knows? I apologize. My cats are playing, but being mean to each other. So, anywho, we do have a save function this year. This is something that we did have last year, but I think there were some problems with it. I've tested it. It does work, but if you have problems, we have an email and hotline you can call for it. So, that being said, know what you're talking about. We've touched on that. You know your farm the best, so know that going in. Um, and I guess what I'm also trying to say here is like, don't try to impress the reviewers too much, but like, impress yourself, I guess. Like, put your best foot forward. Like, you know what you're talking about. Um, Trust in your gut and yourself. And I think your application will be great. Uh, all right, tips. So here's a few writing tips that I've talked with the review committee about and tried to get their ideas on, like, when you're reading a good application, what makes it good? When you're reading an application that could use some work, like, what would be feedback you would give someone? So we recommend looking at the whole application first. And that's really so that you can see the questions and know where to put the information into those questions, if that makes sense. That way you're not being repetitive in your answers, but you're providing new information in each question and kind of answering that question fully. We also recommend for the long form answers, you can go ahead and copy and paste those questions into a Word document or a Google document and start answering them like as you have time, and then just copy and paste them into the actual application later. That's what we do at RAFI actually when we're writing grants. It's a great way to just not worry about your tab closing or making sure you save the thing, just to like come back to you and mull over questions. And next, use list. We touched on that. I'm a big proponent of using list. We're not looking for total complete sentences. If that helps you be clear and concise, go for the list. And also, this was less of a problem last year, but definitely account for tech problems. The last day of the application that it's open, we usually have a spike in people submitting applications, and that can cause our system to crash. So be aware that that may happen. So the quicker you can do stuff, the better. But again, we have people on hand to help if there are tech problems. And we've touched on this, but yeah, write your application as if you have like this person has no idea who you are because they most likely don't. You might have a friend on the review committee, but probably not. So definitely just keep that in mind as you're writing. Great. Did I skip the slide? Nope. All right. Awesome. And I see lots of questions, so we're almost to the Q&A section, but I did want to go over a couple of more details that might answer some of these questions. So we have allowable projects here. And in the application, we have a more detailed list of what you are allowed to do with these grant funds. So any infrastructure is obviously allowed. That could be access roads to your farm, that could be gravel, storage, any kind of tunnel, greenhouse, high tunnel, low tunnel, cat tunnel, any of those, definitely allowed. Any equipment, as long as it's paid in full. So I have had questions, could I use these funds to put a down payment on a tractor or a truck for the farm? The answer to that is unfortunately no, and that's just because we're not a lender, so like we're not doing that background to make sure you can continue those payments for that large equipment. But if you already had some funds on hand and the $10,000 would of the grant would then allow you to buy outright a large piece of equipment like that, that's totally fine. But no down payments. And then we have seeds, fertilizers, etc. So things that are going to help you start the season off right. Livestock, you can buy live animals with these funds. I got that question a lot last year, and so that is absolutely something you can do with these funds, or animal feed, or shelter, or fencing for any livestock. Any hand tools or like smaller tools like that, absolutely. Irrigation was actually the number one project that we had farmers wanting to fund last year. So irrigation always in high demand. Cold storage, so this could be mobile cold storage. This could be any like CoolBot or like that like Master Chef website walk-in cooler. And I did just see this in the chat. Wash and pack area, absolutely. Those are really hard to find funding for farmers actually. So that's a great use of this grant. And then marketing supplies, this is a big, broad category, but if you're wanting to do like a mobile farmers market and need equipment for that, if you're wanting to do a farm stand, or if you're already at a farmer's market and maybe you want to revamp your stall or need more tables or whatever, totally allowed there. Unallowable projects. Farmer housing is not something these grant funds are intended to cover. So that would be like your rent, your mortgage, other living costs, like any debt you have. Like these funds are not meant to pay those kinds of expenses, but meant really for you to invest into your farm for new infrastructure or repairs to infrastructure you already have. No down payment on things, as we said. Non-farm vehicles, this is a gray area. So if you're using the funds to purchase like a mobile walk-in cooler or like a mobile farmer's market, again, not doing a down payment on a vehicle, but buying it outright. Those would be allowed, but it's the gray area of like, I want to buy a truck, I'm going to use it for deliveries, but also I'm going to use this for various other things on my personal use. That would be an application that would definitely score lower, and it may not even make it to the review committee because it's not really the intention of these funds. The last one, and this is something we see a lot, is like any kind of food access project. And like while we do have a program at RAFI that does support food access projects with faith communities, this is not something that these funds are intended to be used for. It's really more so for like that like farming entrepreneur who is building their business or like making their business stay, have more longevity, as opposed to like food access projects. In general, these funds again are meant to help your farm be more viable, to help your farm be more efficient at the scale it's already at, maintain its current size and viability. Whereas we're not so much looking to support the like nonprofit food access work or like agro-tourism. Like we are really looking for farmers who are getting their livelihood from selling their farm products, raising their own farm products. And really, if their livelihood's not already invested in farming, they're looking to get to that level. Let's see. Right, so almost to the Q&A, which I know is probably everyone's most useful part, so I want to leave plenty of time for that. So in general, what we're looking for, we talked about the viability piece. Grant funds shouldn't go toward just paying the farmer salary. If you're looking to pay for contract labor to do your project, that's totally fine. Or maybe you need a summer worker to help with the harvest because your farm's expanding with these funds, that's okay. But we're really not looking for that money to just be the farmer's salary, but really wanting that to be invested into the farm. We also get asked a lot if farmers can use this to buy merch. That's not necessarily a no. If you can make a compelling reason for like, I want to have 150 t-shirts made because X, Y, and Z, and it's a compelling story for our review committee, that's not necessarily a no. It may be a lesser scored application, so just want to let you all know that up front. And the last thing I'll say, I guess two last things, and these kind of go hand in hand. We're really looking for an applicant who is committed to farming. I think this is very true on the beginning farmer because you have been farming for such a small amount of time. So we're really looking for those people who are like dedicated to making it work and like really show that they have the passion, the knowledge, the ability to farm and like want to make that a career long path for themselves. And so that kind of goes with the like projects that make sense. If you are submitting an application for deer fencing and you want like a 2 foot high fence or a 4 foot high fence, a deer is going to jump right over that. So just like go in with that farming knowledge of like, I know how to make my farm work and make good decisions and I have that knowledge, I have that confidence, I'm ready to do this project and make my farm more viable so that my livelihood can be tied to this farm. All right. So grant links. We don't have links yet. We do have a grant website. It's super easy to find if you just type in RAFI Grants 2026. It's the first thing that pops up. I've already tested it, so it's easy to find. The links will be posted there on as the applications open. So beginning farmer on Monday, go check there. The eligibility quiz link will be live. I will be reviewing it. So there is an actual human reviewing every response. And I will look at your responses and I will email you telling you exactly why you are ineligible, if that is the case. That way you can email me back and be like, oh, actually that was a misclick or I misunderstood that question. We want to give people room for that. Which also means if you wait till the last minute to take that eligibility quiz, it might be closed by the time you actually respond to it, and then there's nothing we can do but tell you to wait until next year. So always try to get things done early, and we will be patient and give you grace if there is a misclick or some accident that happened while you were filling that out. So these are the two lines of communication I mentioned. grants@rafiusa.org. That is the email. I am the person who responds to most of those. Malexa will get in there sometimes if I am out of office or something. But I would recommend emailing your questions. We do have a phone number that you can call. That is our beloved coworker, Kelly Dale, who answers all of those phone calls. And She also will answer our farmer hotline sometimes. So that's why I refer people to the email first. And if you don't get a timely response, feel free to call, or if you just prefer calling, that's also fine. Now, I would love to get into questions. So let me stop sharing if I can figure out how.
The questions that have come up in the chat, Angel, I've actually put them in a document and sent them over to you.
Ah, that's awesome. I will get in there. I don't even know how to stop sharing. I haven't done a Zoom webinar in so long. Like, what am I doing? Um, Stop share. There we go. Okay, I don't want to stop the recording on accident. Great. Let me go grab those questions. So many questions. So, this is a great question. If you received the Beginning Farmer Grant in 2025, are you eligible for infrastructure this year? That is an awesome question. You are eligible to apply for infrastructure if you meet that requirement of at least 3 years farming. But I would say you you may be like less priority given that you had just gotten funding the year before. It's not an absolutely no, you're not going to get funded. But just to be totally transparent, like that is a factor in the reviewing of the grants. Kentucky is considered Southeast, and I believe Hope put a list of those states in the chat, which is awesome. So you can refer to those. Are farmers who are employees of a nonprofit urban farm organization? Okay, I see what you're asking. So you're asking, actually, this is an easy one to answer. If you are a registered nonprofit, you are not eligible. Um, Period, point blank. We hate to make that call, but just given like the lack of funding, well, really for anyone in the world right now, but especially farmers, we do want to prioritize those who are for-profit farmers. And so to answer that question a little differently, but if you are a farm manager at a for-profit farm, I would still say you can help the farm owners with their application, absolutely. But I would suggest really getting a lot of their input because they're going to be the ones who are having this money deposited into their account. They're going to be the ones spending this money. So if you're an employee of a farm, definitely like have the farm owners let them know about the project if you want to help them do the application, absolutely. But you, as the farm manager, would not be eligible to receive funds. My farm became official in March of 2023, but didn't produce my first crop until 2025. Ooh, would I fall into the beginning category or southeastern? That is an excellent question, and this is something that came up a lot last year. And it's a gray area, to be totally honest. I would suggest the date you use on the eligibility quiz be the date that you began selling product. And so if that date is January 1st, 2025, I would use that date. You would then fall into the beginning farmer category. Um, that's my suggestion. You could use either date and then be eligible for the infrastructure grant instead if you wanted to do that. But I think it would make more sense in the beginning farmer category. Are leased farms eligible? Absolutely. You do not have to own land to be eligible for this grant. We do ask that there is an official signed lease that's up to date. That way we know like the person that does own this land is okay with you doing a project on this land, right? We don't want to be involved in any weird stuff and people get upset with us because we gave someone a grant that wasn't allowed to farm there. And I'll also add, if you're leasing land, you can't build a permanent project there. An example of this is we had a farmer who wanted to build a bathroom on lease land, right? Like she would have volunteers out, she had employees, made a lot of sense for there to be a bathroom. However, it was a leased land, so she couldn't build permanent structures there. So she built like a mobile restroom, which was really cool. So anything that's mobile, even something like a caterpillar tunnel, though they're super easy to move, you can do that on leased land. Irrigation, absolutely. If you wanted to build like a well on the property, if you didn't have a well, I would say that wouldn't be allowed. Even though that is super needed, it's still like a permanent addition to the land. Can you apply for farm management fund, including equipment, irrigation, and labor? I think I'm understanding this. You're just kind of asking about what's eligible and what's not. And so I would say equipment, absolutely eligible. Irrigation, eligible. Labor, that depends. If you're hiring people or have current employees you're hoping to pay with this fund, that is allowed. You just would not be able to pay yourself or a family member. We kind of put that in the same umbrella. Um, if transitioning from more of a homestead setup into a community farm, would we be eligible for the beginning farmer grant or just infrastructure? That's a good question. I would refer back to the previous question of whatever year you began selling products. That's what I would suggest using as your start date as a farm. If you haven't sold product yet, but you're looking to in 2026, that would still fall in that beginning farmer category. Will we be able to print the full application to work on it offline? Last year I couldn't advance the pay. Okay. I think so this is asking, you have to, all the answers are required before you can hit the next button on the application, which is very annoying. I've done plenty of applications where you can't advance to that next page. Um, I will have to test that. I'm going to make a note to myself to test the requirements. But if you would like a Word document of the application, we already have one made. That's what we use when we build the application. Just email grants@rafiusa.org and I can send that to anyone who's interested. And I'll also make a note to put application. So I will, on the actual application link, I'll just make a link to a PDF version of the application so you can print that off, work from that. All right. I'm developing a business plan to buy land and start a rabbit-based value-added farm. I don't qualify for any of these grants. Oh, does RAFI offer planning or technical assistance for producers preparing for land access and future funding? You are in PR. Awesome. I would say to reach out to Malexa. She is on this call. Let me put her email in here. So that is a great Malexa question. I'm not sure how much um, technical assistance there is around accessing land in PR as far as what RAFI staff does, but Malexa will be the person to ask. So sorry for Malexa for putting you on the spot, but that is a great person to ask. Do value add projects qualify? Absolutely. That is something I didn't include in the PowerPoint at all, which I should. We've had plenty of people use funds for like a commercial kitchen that they wanted to make or do improvements to different marketing materials for value added things or other equipment. So that is totally something we allow. Walk-in pack station, we talked about that. Is there a minimum proposed amount for the infrastructure grant? Yes, we ask that farmers request at least 5,000. So you can be between 5 and 10,000. Tool storage. Absolutely. This is something that we've had a lot of farmers ask for. We've had people make mobile tool sheds, like small barns to large sheds. So that is absolutely something we've had people spend funds on before and absolutely something we consider eligible. Does irrigation include a water collection tank or gutters for a building near the crop location? Yes. This is another thing we've had farmers ask for in the past, and we have funded in the past, and something that's absolutely eligible with the funds. Um, Another value added question, a dehydrator for drying herbs. Absolutely. Absolutely. Just a second. I'm gonna grab my dog really quick. I love working remotely, but it does make things difficult. Repairs to a facility. I would ask for specifics on that, but I think so. So if you have maybe a covered area where you process vegetables, absolutely, you can do that. If you have a restroom on site that needs repairs, absolutely. If you have a barn that needs repairs, yes. If you're looking to repair like your home's roof, that would be a no. Like anything that's like your house versus like farm repairs, that would be a no on the home side. If your project is actually just expansion of a couple of non-related projects, like more native shade-grown medicinal plants and also marketing supplies to hold workshops and education seminars, and developing an agrotourism demonstration area, is it better to just focus on one or both if both are under the 10K limit? This is an excellent question because this touches on a lot of different things. So I would say probably the majority of our grantees last year did a mix of projects. Like maybe they did an irrigation project, but they also had chickens they raised for eggs, so they built a chicken tractor. That's fine to do a mix of projects if they're, within the grant limits. Where this question in particular gets a little more gray area is if you want to do native shade grown medicinal plants, absolutely, and marketing supplies to hold workshops and develop more agrotourism. The agrotourism piece is probably going to get your application scored a bit lower, to be totally transparent and honest. So I would say focus more on doing projects that are going to help your production or your selling of a product versus a selling of a tourism destination or like an education station or something of that nature. Like what's going to score highest are the projects that are helping you with your production and your selling of a product versus agrotourism endeavors. Do your reviewers intend to spread funds across types of projects? This is an excellent question. So, if we're trying to, and by we, I mean the review committee, even though I don't have a vote, but I help facilitate it. So, if the review committee is looking at, um, maybe we're trying to choose between 5 different projects and 3 of them are irrigation. One of them is something to do with bees, and one of them is um, native plants, wanting to expand their native plants. Is it going to factor in, like, when we decide not to fund one of those irrigation projects to fund a different project just to have more like project diversity? And the answer is no. We like to have a balance of projects that we fund, and it is something that RAFI's kind of thinking about in the back of our heads. Same thing as like we don't want to have like 20 grantees that are all in North Carolina, right? We don't want to like show that kind of favoritism. But it's not going to be a huge factor, especially with the review panel. They're not really thinking about that. I don't think they're like making a list of like, okay, well, I've already scored like a lot of irrigation projects higher. Maybe I need to do someone else. higher so that we have more projects represented. That's really not something we think much about, and an excellent question to ask. So I would say if you're asking that so that you can have an edge to your application or be like, oh, maybe I need to think of something super creative and cool. Don't worry about it. Think about the project that your farm needs the most, that you can write about in like the most passionate, informed way, and go from there. Because it's, yeah, like we might, like last year, I didn't notice we had so many hydroponic projects represented. It was something that wasn't even in my head until I was doing helping Hope with the comms stuff that I was like, oh, we have quite a few hydroponic people. But excellent question. Oh, we have so many questions. I think we're going to be able to get through them all though. Can these funds be used to purchase equipment or buy new equipment? Oh, okay, yes. So this person's asking, could I purchase restaurant equipment if, say, a restaurant went out of business or they just are selling equipment? Absolutely. You do not need to spend more money than you need to just because it's grant funds. Like if you find a used walk-in cooler at some restaurant that closed down, absolutely do the cheaper option. That is a-okay. Um, so yeah, we don't ask that you buy new equipment at all if you can find it used. Scoring rubric available. I do believe that a scoring rubric is available on the application, but I'm going to make a note to make sure that it's on there. Boop, boop. We do, I know for sure there is a list of criteria that we look at on the application. And I forget what all the categories are, but I know that they're at least listed, but we could get a rubric uploaded there. How many grants will be awarded? Excellent question. I'm not sure if I had to guess, it would probably be between, for beginning farmer, probably between like 8 to 13, because some people do ask for like a lower amount than the full 5,000. Um, and then for infrastructure, if I had to guess, again, probably the same, like 8 to 15 maybe, because again, some people will request less than 10,000. And for the US Caribbean, I'm not sure. But if I had to guess, I would say maybe 8 to 10. But Melixa's on here. If you're able to throw in the chat. Okay, Melexa said yes to 8 to 10. Awesome. Ba-ba-ba. So nonprofit farms are a non-starter or will just score lower. Excellent question. In the past, we've kind of wavered on this of like, do we just make nonprofits a total ineligibility? And it was something we wanted to do last year, but we decided not to. And it got like kind of sticky and gray area. So this year we just decided if you have nonprofit status, we are not able to grant to you. I know it's not the best, but we get about 600 applications across all three grants. And so we really are trying to prioritize those for-profit farming businesses. You ask for a lot of items that a beginning farmer will not have, like pictures of crops, sales reports. How do we meet this requirement if we have not started? Absolutely awesome question. So if you're applying for the beginning farmer stipend and your first year of doing sales is going to be 2026, the things you could upload instead of like photos of your farm is just the land you're going to use. Like if you've even broken ground a little bit or have put up fencing for if you're going to get animals, just show us that you have been working on something. This was a request our grant reviewers really wanted. They were like, man, I wish I could see this person's operation. Because some of the reviewers are diligent and they will get on Instagram, Facebook, your website. So just trying to put all of that information in one place for them is something they've asked for. And beginning farmers, they understand that you have less than 3 years of experience. This might be your first year owning your own farm. So I would say like whatever picture you have to be like, this is where I will do stuff. You could even open up Microsoft Paint, lay out what you want to do, like that's awesome. But yeah, just give them some kind of visual representation of like, this is where I will be. Maybe you have fencing up already. That is totally fine for a picture, but we understand that beginning farmers will have less to work with. And as far as the business question, whether you're applying for beginning farmer or Southeast infrastructure, we're still going to ask that you have some kind of business entity. So if you don't have like an invoice or any sales reports, we will ask for like an LLC establishment. We'll ask for something that is showing your commitment to your business ownership. Um, and I'll have to think on that a little more too, of like what are other eligible things you could post there. But feel free to email that grants email account and we can do some like brainstorming together on that. Are there certain types of projects that seem to be preferred? Okay, we kind of answered this before. So the review committee is not really looking for any particular um, projects really. But we have seen trends like irrigation was super in demand last year. A few years ago, that was cold storage was really something people were asking for. So yeah, there's nothing really we're preferencing over other things. And I'll also say we're looking for projects that, and this isn't a make or break, but something that's going to help your project score higher is if it's a project that there's not already funding for out there, which again, there's not a lot of grants for farmers out there. There are resources to help farmers with um, different like native plants, for example, or pollinator plants. There are programs out there that help with that. So while that's not necessarily like an eligible project, it may not score as high as something like a wash and pack area that is hard to find funding for. Will funding be awarded to only one farmer per category or multiple farmers selected within each category? Again, this is something we don't pay a lot of attention to. So the majority of our grantees tend to be vegetable farmers, and that's just because most of the people who apply are vegetable farmers. But that doesn't necessarily mean that we are only going to take 6 vegetable farmers and 1 livestock farmer and 1 bee farmer. Yeah, we don't think on that too much. Well, I won't even say too much, really at all. But that is a trend we've seen. But yeah, we're not going to cap our limit on like, all right, no more chicken farmers. We can't handle any more of those. Ba-ba-bum. When is the projected disbursement date? Excellent question. So applications open Monday and then 2 weeks after that. We don't expect to start doing payments until probably May or June. It's a long process. So you apply and then we do kind of like an internal review just to make sure everyone's eligible. Then we do that external review for people for a review panel. Then we get our finalist and we move to due diligence, which takes about 2 to 3 weeks, and then we can start making payments. So it's a long process. I wouldn't expect funds to start going out until probably May. So many projects on the calendar. Are we required to submit only one project? I would say submit as like on your grant application, you need to have a project that fits within that five or $10,000 price limit. So if that's like 2 projects, that's fine. You don't need to submit multiple grant applications per project, just like include them in that. Be like, with this $10,000, we're going to do an irrigation system and also a chicken tractor. That's totally fine. It does not need to just be one solid project. As long as they're both eligible, that's fine. Is a farm eligible for a new farm grant if crops were grown but were not sold due to not enough volume for a local CSA? Okay, so essentially what this question is asking is, can I apply for the beginning farmer stipend if I have not sold crops yet? Yes, you can. And I will say if you have not sold crops yet, I would highly recommend getting your some kind of business status, whether that's an LLC or something like that, just so we know that you intend to sell products. The beginning farmer stipends are really hard to review and score with our reviewers because they're like, well, this person's not farming yet. So how do I know if they should receive this fund? So beginning farmers can be really tricky to rank, and our reviewers know that. And we've had the same reviewers for like 4 years now. So they've seen a lot of different applications. So I would just really encourage you to have, I saw someone put this in the chat, but if you have an FSA farm number, that's another thing we can go by to be like, okay, this person is showing farm commitment to selling products in the future. Okay, this person, this is an excellent question. They have things like leaf pine straw and other non-food products on that they produce. They do seedlings. I would say, unfortunately, this would probably fall into the ineligible. We're really looking for farmers who are producing an edible product and selling that edible product. And so, unfortunately, this I think would fall into that ineligible category. Repairs to poultry house roof. Absolutely, that can count. Is an operator of land be allowed to apply with not owning the land? Okay, I think I understand what this is asking. If you do not own the farm business, I would say you are not eligible. But if you own your farm business and you are leasing land, you are eligible to apply. However, when we get to due diligence, we are going to be asking for a signed up-to-date lease. So if you just have a verbal agreement with someone, I would say from now until you fill out the application, I would highly, highly recommend getting something in writing. It doesn't have to be like a super, you don't need like a lawyer to review your document, but we just need proof that you are allowed to be growing food there. And have it be dated and signed and look a little bit official at least so that we know that this person is allowing you to be there. Um, so what's the difference between the infrastructure grant and the other one? A little bit confused on agreement to use the land long term. Um, this is an excellent question. If you're still confused on like which grant is which, I would just recommend visiting our website. And that has it laid out very clear, kind of like side by side what each grant does. But essentially, if you've been farming less than 3 years, you fall into that beginning farmer category. If you've been farming 3 or more years, you fall into that infrastructure category. And then if you've been farming 3 or more years and are in Puerto Rico or USVI, you fall into the US Caribbean grants. Will wildlife or pollination projects be funded? This isn't a necessarily no, but it goes back to that thing of there are already projects out there that help with projects like that. So it may not be like a high priority for funding, but it's not an absolute no. Um, yes, I just saw Hope. Oh, we're right at 1 o'clock, and we got to the end of some of the questions. And I see a lot more in here. So if people need to hop off, feel free to hop off. I'm going to look through these questions just at a quick glance and see if there's any that we forgot or haven't addressed yet. Can tax returns be used to show eligibility? Absolutely. Yeah. If you have your previous tax record as self-employed or a Schedule F, yes, that can absolutely count. Will bank account in the farm name be sufficient for beginning farms? Yes, and I'm so glad you brought that up because I knew there was another document that we accepted for that, and I couldn't think of it. So yes, if you have a business banking account, like for instance, my farm is Purple Clay Farm, we have a First Citizens Purple Clay Farm business account, you could absolutely submit a bank statement that has that name on there. Oh, I can't believe I didn't touch on this, and I'm sorry I didn't, but historically underserved farmers. That is a requirement for eligibility for the Southeastern grants. Um, and there's a few different aspects to that. This person saying they are not a veteran or considered socially disadvantaged. Um, there's also like an income test you can do, which we actually link to on the eligibility quiz. But essentially, if your farm makes like, I think it's either less or poverty line or less for your county, you are considered historically underserved. So that's another thing. You can do that self-assessment through the eligibility quiz to see if you qualify for that. But yes, that I'm glad you brought that up. I'm sorry I forgot to touch on that. Let's see. All right, I think we've addressed just, oh, okay. Excellent question. Edible only, you mentioned native plants were eligible, so only edible native plants. What about flowers? So, when I said native plants were eligible, I meant if you are someone at your farm, you're producing some kind of edible product and you want to plant native plants to help with erosion or pollinators, that project would be allowed. If you are a farm that just sells native plants, you would most likely not be eligible. However, if you are a farmer that, say, you produce cut flowers, native plants, and also vegetables, you're eligible. So thank you for that clarification. Yes, so we will wrap up now. Thank you all so much for your questions. And again, grants at rafiusa.org. If you have more questions, we will love to answer them. If you need to talk about your farm and your project to someone to understand things, like absolutely give us a call. And yeah, thank you all so much. I wish we had more time for people to come off mute and all of that, but it was a large group today, and so we appreciate all of your patience and
I
whatnot.
have, can I add
Yes,
one quick thing?
absolutely.
Hi, my name's Beth. I wanted to say also that we are going to get this webinar translated into Spanish, and that will be up on our website by mid next week because we have to send it out to be translated. So if you speak Spanish or you know someone who speaks Spanish, please look at our website next week. Thank you.
Yay.